My earliest memory is riding in my grandfather's boat, arm over the side, hand in the spray. I've spent much of the rest of my life chasing this feeling. All of that has led to this. The wooden boat experience. What a week! 750 miles traveled to visit 2 boat shops. Not to mention what happened here. I hardly know how to get started. But here it is. Season 2, Episode 10. The Wooden Boat Experience. Saturday was a great day. The weather was fantastic, hardly any wind. It wasn't just the weather, but we got the roof on the addition and we moved the building. So glad the Amish and Doug came over to help. Unfortunately, this isn't the first time we've moved this building. If you want to check the link above, you can see the last time we did it, also with the Amish. It's like the Amish version of the Wicked Witch of the West. The last little bit of movement was just stubborn, but finally we got it. So we are here in Fairhaven, and what's the name of it again, Mark?
Adirondack Boat Works. Yeah, so Jack McGreevey had a canoe repair shop in Victory, New York, started in the mid-70s. And that's when I first met Jack, was in 78, and that's when I started buying, and he would restore canoes. Andy had worked for him back in the 90s, and that's Jack there in the shop, near the later days. And so as time went on, I started working with Jack around 2011. In about 2015, he got sick and passed away. It was 5 years ago this week.
Who's this?
That's Jack Lusick. And he's the guy that also used to work with Jack. He's the gentleman that designed the Nightingale canoe we built this past winter. And the form is hanging above the trout boat out there right now for that. So when Jack passed away, his wife let us stay at the shop. That's about the time Andy came down. When Jack passed away, there were still boats in the shop to be finished. So I was working on the canoes, and Andy was working on a guide boat that was down there. It has to be this guide boat here, a Parsons.
Actually, one in both photos.
One in both photos. This is a before. This is a before and an after shot of the guide boat that Andy started working on. So back in the winter of 2016, Andy and I were working the shop. We stayed at Jack's old shop in Victory for a couple of years, and this boat was finally completed up here. But we ended up moving Jack's shop from Victory to Fairhaven. But this is we were talking about Jack, and Jack had built forms for a Racine canoe and a Detroit canoe. So this was the first, besides the prototype, the first off, this was the first boat Racine that Jack built on his form, which is this form right up here. So this is the form, the mold for the Racine.
It's interesting how much more elaborate, Andy, that these forms are than a skiff, which is just stations.
Yeah, well,
why is that?
Because these are production forms.
Oh, these are production. You got these production forms from.
Yeah, I mean,
Jack built these forms.
He built. Right, they're modeled after. Wood canvas canoes were built in large quantities, so they required a form that you could build a large quantity of canoes on.
Quickly,
right. Now, basically take the idea of the birch bark canoe, but add manufacturing techniques to that process, okay? So you end up with a strong form that you can build on. And then the beauty of the form point out the metal banding. Okay?
I noticed that. That's what drew my eye quickly.
Each rib gets bent over that banding.
Oh, so you're bending the ribs right on the form.
That's right. So there's a stem that's pocketed into the form.
Stem goes in.
There's an inwale that's pocketed into the form. The rib gets nailed off to the inwale. Okay, now when you're all done and all the ribs are bent over the form, you come back through and start planking. And Mark can show you some canoe tacks, but basically they're a brass tack, and when they get driven through the planking and through the rib, they hit that metal.
They're bending over?
And they clinch.
They're clinching on the form?
You don't need somebody on the other side.
Why can't we make it? Let's take a look at these clinch nails and some other fasteners.
So, what we're looking at is a bunch of compartments of boat fasteners, okay? So there's 2 compartments of canoe tacks. And these are boat nails. These are copper boat nails. Clinch nails, if you will, okay? So these are what are going to hold your skiff together.
Okay.
All right? Now these you're going to pre-drill. You're going to come through your planking. And what I would do if you're working by yourself, you need to get something along the lines of this.
Right.
All right. Back up the rib. Run the nail through at least part way. And then you want to basically get this end bent.
Okay.
All right, so it's going to be trapped in the rib.
Could you go through with a pair of pliers and just give it a little tiny bit?
You don't even need to.
You don't. It's that soft.
You don't need to. It's soft. So if you hit it in the direction of the keel,
oh, you're hitting it with that.
Yeah,
with
slide down the rib.
Is that called a clenching?
It's a clenching iron.
Okay.
Yep. So if you're heading towards the keel, gets it going in the right direction.
Okay.
All right. Then set up with the clenching iron over what you just bent, and drive it the rest of the way in.
Oh, so you've already got it bent, but the head's not all the way.
Right.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yep.
So, see, and the taper will help you with that, right? Because you're drilling a hole to fit the middle, not this part here.
Always go small enough to just get it started.
So we would be drilling for this diameter,
Yes, exactly.
and then and it's going to
Wedges
fill the
its
hole.
way in.
Okay.
All right. So that's what this is. All right. So we've got copper boat nails. We've got brass canoe tacks. These wire nails are for riveting.
For rivets.
Okay. So here's your rove right here. So basically, if you decide you want to rivet your ribs in instead of using boat nails,
What would be my advantage of that?
no, rivets are stronger.
Okay.
All right. Takes a lot more time, but it was always considered a higher quality job.
So you could clinch the lap strakes and then rivet the ribs?
You could rivet the strakes as well. Now, if you think about when you're coming through 2 pieces of lap, okay, with that clinch coming in on it, it kind of puts a bit of side stress on the wood. You've got to be kind of careful how you do it. The beauty of these is they work straight. Basically, drill your hole.
Very even.
Drive this in. It's a straight pull. It's not putting any pressure on the side of the wood at all. Okay?
Now, I've watched the guys at Acorn and Arabella. So you drive that in, then you cut it off a certain height above, and then you just... Now, how would you hammer that over? They're using a pneumatic tool because they're doing big rivets.
Yeah, that's good. Well, this works really well. Okay? So your ball peen hammer, which most people don't know what to do with this, but this is exactly made in this thing, and you work your way around until it does a nice mushroom for your rivet. So...
Is there a rule about how far...
Oh, there probably is.
Oh, you... Okay.
But I don't know it.
And then there's ring nails that we were talking about when we were talking about...
These are the bronze ring nails we were talking about. And they are really great for lots of things. You know, blind nailing. Right?
So that's what I want to use on my stem. Where we were talking about releasing that and then coming back in.
Right,
Okay.
because your stem was put together with
those.
this. And as you can see from the wedge shape, once it starts to let go, if it's not clinched, it's gone.
It's amazing that to think that those are actually quite a bit different with that than a cut nail.
Yes.
Because a cut nail's not tapered the full length,
That's
correct?
Right. That's right. That's right. Now these guys, somebody. Yeah. If you look at it, it's a little wider right in here.
Yeah,
than
it is, isn't
back
it?
Here.
That's from hammering the angle on it. Is
Yep.
They kind of stretched it.
Yep.
Their machine did.
Correct.
So it is actually even at the shank, and then it changes where they made it pointed.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep. So that's the deal there. And, brads and escutcheon pins, but that's just for finish work. So, fastener lesson.
All right.
One of these is a beautiful thing. Tack hammer is really nice for doing your clinching, and a ball peen hammer if you're going to do some riveting. So.
Awesome.
All right, Scott.
Am I coming around that way?
You're going to come around over here. I can kind of hold this for you, just like that. If you want to drive those, start with this guy. Okay.
Is it important to go straight, or doesn't it matter?
Straight down. Yep.
You can feel it when it hits the metal.
You bet. Let me move forward. All right. There you go.
All right, let's see what one looks like before.
Oh, came out the side.
I missed a
that
little
guy.
bit, huh?
Yeah, that was,
Yeah, we're going to do that again.
Yep. Just
I'll
move that
take
guy
over a
towards the
touch.
middle. There you go. Good man. Right
Yeah,
on.
as soon as it hits that. So now, if I was doing that in a boat, the boat's not going to move. I would actually be holding this behind.
Yep.
We filmed a lot more that day, and we'll get back to Itchy Dog Boat Works in another episode. But the rain mostly stopped, and this guide boat needs to be taken out on its maiden voyage. At the end of episode 10, I've added a bonus for you with an example of one of the deep cuts that Patreon members get to see each week. Stick around and check it out. No clue.
Right.
Heavy guys float, so.
Yeah.
Jacket, no clue. No
They've never pulled a heavy guy off the bottom. What is that stuff? Dacron? How do I say it? Dacron. So this is the wooden and Dacron boat experience.
Yes. The hybrid boat experience.
Don't worry, we are going to thoroughly explore the process used to restore the hull of this guide boat with Dacron in a future episode.
in.
The next day, I headed to Massachusetts to visit Acorn to Arabella. They asked me to do a drawing for them for a project they have going on. More on that later. This sailboat they're building is quite a project, and it was nice to get a chance to talk to them about boats and YouTube. Steve really took a liking to my drone. Here's a bit of the drawing I did for him. That's it for Acorn to Arabella this week. We'll have more next week. Now enjoy this example of the deep cut extras only Patreon members get to see. By supporting the WBE for as little as $1 a month, you too can see deep cut videos each week. Thanks for joining us, and I'll see you next week for episode 11.
Talking about ways wooden boats can go down, but this was a Cayuga boatyard, and there was a beaver living, where all the boats tie up is where the barges used to come in and load molasses, okay? So it's this concrete thing, but if you get down with a dive mask, you can look back underneath, 15 feet, So it's built out over the water and it's wooden pilings and all that. Well, there's this beaver living back in there. So Al's sleeping on his boat with his wife, and right next to his ear, this thing just starts eating its way through the boat. It's like old mahogany, and evidently the beaver was like, man, I never had this before. This is awesome, Toss a little bottom paint on. It's like super great. And he was going crazy. And Al's out in the, like in his underwear at 2 a.m. trying to, shag the beaver. The beaver wanted that boat, And if he hadn't been there,
That beaver would have been through the side in no time.
they had to haul the boat out and do a plank repair, because it had eaten easily halfway through the plank before he finally got the thing going,
Well, and mahogany is like the softest. Mahogany
Especially
is amazing
old
to me.
mahogany, old Philippine.
You work with mahogany, you're like, you can understand why didn't everybody want to work with that 24/7? It's the nicest wood in the world to work with. I mean, it does everything well.
Well, when we owned the Philippines, that worked out pretty good for us.
And not for the Filipinos.
No, when they kicked us out is when suddenly Philippine mahogany became like gold, So, and the other mahoganies, to be fair, aren't necessarily so beautiful to work with.
No, you're right.
So, yeah, Philippine mahogany, which isn't even a mahogany, it's a cedar. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that, no.
It's a type of cedar, and that's why it's so nice to work with. Except the beauty of it is, unlike cedar, it doesn't have these defined grain, right? It's pretty, doesn't matter.
You can tell which way the grain goes, but you can't tell much else.
It's not that important. It's not as important as like your winter and summer grain and your red cedars or your white cedars. So, yeah, it's awesome wood. You're right. And that's why everybody was building boats as much as they could until they came out with plywood. And then they were like, oh, well, let's just peel the tree and glue it up in big slabs and we'll sell it to people that way. And that was awesome too. So.